Good morning. This is Notes from Underground. Um, what I'd like to do today is talk about some comments that I got on the site. A lot of people mentioned that I had picked three three candidates for my search for a proper audience so that I can remedy my ums and ahs. The theory is that if you look in people's eyes while you're speaking, you tend to not have that speech issue. You're not saying and it just completely eliminates them. And in my quest, I had come up with three individuals. There was Aristotle, contemplating the bust of Homer. There was Winston Churchill, and Harvey Korman. Of those three, it was brought to my attention that, why didn't I have any women in my choices? And I think maybe there is a bias. Maybe I did have women in my initial list of women whom women who I think I respect greatly, or women who are just kind of curious. Here's one individual I picked up on. Her name is Annie Edson Taylor. She's the heroine of Niagara Falls. She is known for, on her 63rd birthday, she had gotten to a barrel and went over Niagara Falls in it. I guess it was part of a daredevil craze that was going on around the early 20th century. It looked like October 24th, 1901. I don't think it was in reaction to any, like a stock crash or something like that, where people were jumping out of buildings. This was, or maybe it was a fad before, because they didn't have a lot of skyscrapers, that people would just get in a barrel and go over the falls when they were in dire financial state because of the stock market. I mean, this had nothing to do with that. This woman was 63 years old when she did this. A lot of people did not want to assist her and help her with this stunt. And again, there was a lot of carnival people out there, people who would love to sponsor such an oddity, an event of especially a 63-year-old woman, and attempting to get in a barrel and ride it down Niagara Falls. But even the carnival people wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. So she had to do a lot of it on herself. I mean, you think of it, she's 63 years old, and a lot of people were questioning her motive and saying, why a barrel? Why Niagara Falls? And she's 63 years old. Well, a lot of people didn't have retirement plans back then. Most of the poor were the elderly back then. This was probably, I would assume, part of her retirement plan. She was a smart woman. She was actually a school teacher. I'm sure it must have surprised a lot of kids to find out that the person who was teaching them in their elementary school later were to go on and get in a barrel and go over the Niagara Falls in it. And I guess the thing is, you can see even in the bottom of the text here, is that she actually survived it, which was amazing. And again, I often wonder if she had done this earlier in her life and then became a teacher. That probably would have been very rough for the kids in the class, because they probably would not be able to focus on any subject where this woman was teaching, because they just constantly see her like climbing into a barrel and going over the Niagara Falls. But again, this is what she did, and she was 63 years old. And I always thought, like, what is the motivation here? And a lot of people said they didn't want to assist her in her own suicide. But I mean, clearly she wasn't a science teacher, because if you even look at it, there was she just wanted to go over the fall. And then some people said, well, no, put an animal in. They actually did a dry run with a cat, and the cat did live. Also, this was a custom barrel that she made. I was wondering what kind of specs she was working off of to begin with. And even if you look at this barrel, it's tough to wonder whether she actually, obviously she wasn't wearing a hat in the barrel because there was not enough room. One improvement, which, it's kind of leaning towards, there was a little bit of science. After they had sent the cat over in the barrel, they had put a mattress inside the barrel. She decided that would be better, but that looks a pretty tight barrel, and I'm not sure if she went in head first. I have to read. She has an autobiography, and I think I should probably read it. I have not been able to find it yet, but she probably went in head first. Now I'd say feet first, because I don't want to be able to pop that lid with my hand. Remember, she could pop it with her feet. There's a lot of options here. The more I look at it, but clearly she didn't have the hat on, and they took her out there in a boat. It was floating. They said they pumped some air into it. You can read the Wikipedia page, and they put a cork in it, and then she floated down, went over the falls. She had lived, and then she spent the rest of her life doing lectures. And she got mixed up in some other types of. She's also claimed she was a clairvoyant. I don't know if it was a result of the barrel incident, but I often, and look at that barrel. I mean, there's many. Did she have a Coopersmith at the time that she was working with? Did she go through a couple of different Coopersmiths? They came up with prototypes. I'm not quite sure. And maybe it's in the book, so I'm going to have to check to understand where she would to trust someone to make such a barrel. Like, where do you stop with the rings? And again, people have to think about barrels too. At this time in the 1900s, early 1900s, barrels were kind of almost on their way out. I mean, bags were taking over. People would prefer, like, there was always a tension over the centuries between a barrel and a satchel. When do you use one? Obviously, the barrel is very heavy, but durable. Satchel, again, easy to get into, but easy to carry around. But again, for preserving and things like that, or storing on a ship, the barrels would win out because they also protected what was inside, as long as what was inside wasn't being crushed with its own weight. So another interesting point here, I call this a discussion around final vocabulary. I remember reading from Cicero at one time where he talked about, people can live their whole life and, they